All right, as people in Florida dealt with the destruction from Hurricane Michael, President Trump hosted Kanye West in the Oval Office. The meeting was strange, with Kanye West going on a 10-minute rant. Here's just a portion of it.
I love Hillary. I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son. There was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero. And you made a Superman cape for me also as a guy that looks up to you, looks up to Ralph Lauren, looks up to American industry guys, non-political, no put the beep on it, however you want to do it, 5 seconds delay, and just goes in and gets it done.
All right, let's discuss this with former South Carolina House member and CNN commentator Bakari Sellers and Mark Short, who is the director for legislative affairs at the White House and is also a CNN political commentator. Mark, I want to start with you.
Yeah.
Is the Oval Office now open for profanity-laced appearances on national TV like that?
No, it shouldn't be, Alisyn. But, you know, at the same time, the president has certainly opened the Oval Office more to a lot of meetings that I think is probably good for Americans to see some of the conversations he has in there and the transparency. But you can't always control what somebody's going to say in that environment. But no, of course he shouldn't be having profanity-laced conversations live on camera.
I understand. I'm just referring to when Republicans used to talk about the decency of the Oval Office and want to preserve it and used to rail against people visiting the Oval Office. And now it just feels like, on national TV, hearing this rant.
Well, Alisyn, I think the president, honestly, is somebody who's always wanted to have the Oval Office more open and to show it to not just members of Congress, but also the American people. And you know, as staffers, you would often fret about what might happen on camera inside the Oval Office, but he has an understanding of what the American people want to see and flair for the moment.
Well, yeah, that is fair. Those are true words. But were you worried when you were there or other staffers about the respectability of the Oval Office and preserving it?
In all fairness, I don't think the president's ever disrespected that office there. I do think that he does want to have more meetings in there and more opportunity for the media to see the conversations happening in there. But I don't think
that's a productive one.
I don't know. I think that's a question to be seen in the future, Alisyn. I think the reason he was there was to discuss prison reform. And, you know, that's honestly an issue that has not gotten as much attention that I do think if Democrats gain more seats in Congress could actually advance.
Sure, but I don't know that Kanye West is the best messenger for that.
Well, again, I think that was the intention, is to say, how can we draw more attention to this issue? It's one that CNN's own Van Jones helped to work with the White House on, got passed through the House.
Today that's not what people are talking about. But I do want to get Bakari in. Bakari, what do you think when you see that display yesterday?
Well, I mean, just to harp on your point slightly, I know Republicans were pulling their eyeballs out when Barack Obama put his feet on the Resolute desk. So I'm not sure. I think we have an ounce of hypocrisy there when you have Kanye West banging on the desk and cursing and yelling in the White House, in the Oval Office. But I think that kind of masks the larger problem that we have. To Mark's point, we're supposed to be having a conversation about criminal justice reform. And many of us, and myself included, don't believe that Kanye West is someone who has the depth to tackle this issue or to take on this issue. At not one point during this 10-minute soliloquy did we hear anything about ending the war on drugs, ending the prohibition on marijuana, ending or canceling out for-profit prisons, making sure that we had rehab for nonviolent offenders. I mean, ending cash bail. The list goes on and on and on. I'm not sure that he is the right one to have these conversations. If the president was serious, and Mark probably has his ear, then you would make sure he reads Michelle Alexander's book about mass incarceration and make sure he has conversations with Doreen McKesson, not just bring in a circus, because that's what he brought in yesterday. And, you know, a lot of us, a lot of people, not myself, a lot of people are disappointed in Kanye West, but I had no level of expectation of him going into that office yesterday. I think he proved me right.
Mark, that wasn't a serious, substantial conversation about prison reform yesterday. That was a reality show moment.
It probably turned into more of a reality show moment, but Alisyn, at the same time, I do think the president's sincere about advancing prison reform, and I do think that's something that's going to happen.
I understand. I mean, look, you understand that Democrats feel that there's a lot of hypocrisy that they witness because when, you know, during the Obama administration, in fact, during a hurricane, here is what then Donald Trump tweeted about President Obama. Yesterday, Obama campaigned with Jay-Z and Springsteen, while Hurricane Sandy victims across New York and New Jersey are still decimated by Sandy. Wrong! Exclamation point. Obviously, Hurricane Michael was happening during this display in the Oval Office.
The hurricane had come through, and there's certainly a lot of hypocrisy in politics, Alisyn. At the same time, I do think that this president has been very forward-leaning and using his social media to make sure people are prepared for hurricanes, and he did. After the hurricane had come through, in your recovery phase, I think you've seen Brock Long on your show talk about what the administration is doing, and that is more his responsibility. I don't think you can really hold the president accountable for having additional policy conversation in the White House at that point.
We're just getting word in, my producer's just telling me that the fatality number has just risen for Hurricane Michael. We were afraid it was going to. Brock Long just had told us, he had warned us to prepare for this. And in fact, they are finding more people. So the death toll is now 11. That is up from 6. So obviously this morning, as light comes up, we have to prepare ourselves that things are going to get worse there. Bakari, last word.
You know, yesterday was an embarrassing moment. It was an embarrassing moment for Kanye West. It was an embarrassing moment for the country. You know, many African Americans are finding themselves in a position where Donald Trump doesn't make us feel like Superman. In fact, there are many African Americans, many gay Americans, many Muslim Americans, undocumented Americans, women in this country that Donald Trump makes feel less than human. And so yesterday's display was disgusting, but it won't stop our resolve to continue to push forward on issues that are crucial, like mass incarceration and like criminal justice reform. I just wish that people would stop giving Kanye West all of this light and all of this platform, because he's sucking the life and the energy out of this debate when we need to be having real substantive discussions.
Bakari Sellers, Mark Short, thank you very much for the perspective. John.
Just want to make one note. Those 5 new deaths reported actually come from Virginia, not even Florida, not Mexico Beach. 5 new deaths from Hurricane Michael in Virginia, where the storm passed through overnight. So we're getting much more information on that. We'll bring it to you when it comes in. Can Democrats flip Congress in these midterm elections? Can they flip the House of Representatives? Our Harry Enton, he has been working on this fascinating new way to forecast. It's all going to debut. You're going to get answers you ever even knew you had questions for next. To keep you informed. I'm laughing because I'm now introducing Harry Enton after I say new tool. CNN's The Forecast with Harry Enton is a daily prediction of the outcome of the individual House and Senate races leading up to the midterms. Harry Enton has put together this basically robot to predict the future.
He's working with a team of statisticians. CNN collected a vast amount of historical polling and voting data from public sources. Using that data, The Forecast predicts the outcome of midterm races and other topics of interest. This sounds very scientific. There's something about Harry, so let's get The Forecast with Harry. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
This is very complicated. I'm glad you're driving this.
Oh, I am going to drive this, even though I don't have a driver's license, but fortunately we're in the studio and not out on the road. And the one thing I should just point out is this really was a team effort, so there are just a few people I'd like to thank. Sam Petula, Bryce Acree, and Parker Quinn, who helped work with me on this.
Also his agent, his mom.
My mom.
Yeah, Chad. Don't forget to thank Chad Lowe, or whatever that is, because that's always been an issue. Who's going to win the House?
All right, so let's take a look. Right now, the current House breaks down. Republicans have a clear majority, 235 to 193. What happens after November 6th? Well, we think that the Democrats are going to have control. We think they're going to get 229 seats to Republicans, only 206. You need 218 for a majority. So right now we think that Democrats have the best chance for a majority. Now here's what I should point out. This forecast comes with a margin of error. So let's take a look at what possibly could happen, which is the GOP's best chance. It could be that Republicans actually maintain their majority. Their best case is they have 230 seats to the Democrats' 205. This is something that I think is very important after 2016 to point out that these estimates have margins of error.
But that's a huge margin of error.
It is a huge margin of error. But look, I've looked back through history. We've looked at generic ballot polling since the mid-40s. This is simply the best that we can do. And I'd rather be honest with the viewer, honest with the audience, and say, you know what? We have what we think is the most likely scenario, which is this. But it could be as bad for the Democrats as this, or it could be as good as this. They could get up to 262. Let's say the generic ballot's way off. Let's say Democrats really overperform. They win all the close races. Then they can get up to that number. So there's a wide scenario. Remember, polls are not perfect. They are tools, and we still have a little bit over 3 weeks to go where a lot of things can change.
And even in the worst case scenario with Democrats, that is a seat gain for them in the 10 to 12 range, just not 20 to 30. So you can see the difference that makes.
Yeah.
Math matters more in the House. You can see waves breaking bigger in the House, but you're also forecasting the Senate. What does that look like?
We are forecasting the Senate. So keep in mind that right now, Republicans have 51 seats, the Democrats 49. What do we think is the most likely scenario? We think it's actually Republicans are going to gain a seat. Remember, there are a lot of races in red states, 10 of them Democratic incumbents running in states that Donald Trump won. We think North Dakota, if we look at, let's take a look at some of these close races right here. We think there are a bunch of close races. Dean Heller, that a lot of Democrats wanted to beat, is actually up by a point right now. Missouri, McCaskill leading by a point, Sinema leading by a point, not in this graphic. North Dakota, where we think Heidi Heitkamp's up by 4 points, or down by 4 points, excuse me. That would be a flip to the Republicans. And Tennessee and Texas, which are two states where Democrats were hopeful to make gains. In both of those states, the Republicans are up by 4 or 5
then
points.
Why were Democrats so excited? There was a flurry of excitement for a moment that Democrats might be able to take the Senate. But you're saying in the past few days things have shifted?
Yeah, I would say that there's been a lot of movement in the polls away from the Democrats. And one other thing I'll point out is that the best case, if everything goes bad for Democrats, it could be that Republicans get 57 seats. Best case for Democrats, they could get up to 52, but that's just not the most likely scenario.
And basically, the forecast robot is saying that it is not likely that all the races will break the Democrats' way.
Not at this point.
And that's what it would take. Harriet, and there is something about Harry. Check out this new tool on the website. The forecast is going to be available by 9 a.m. every day at CNN.com/forecast. Each forecast will include the range and certainty of the prediction, along with a daily column to break down what it means for Democrats, Republicans, and you.
But if you don't want to do that, you can just watch New Day because Harry is on every morning with his forecast.
Because there is something about Harry.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you.
So, if younger Americans voted, it could literally change the course of history. But that is a huge if. We'll get a reality check on that from John Avlon next.
Think so? Huh? I've heard he was even at Syracuse. Well, it's great to have you, Jim. Great to have you. Kanye, it's great to be with you. And these are two friends of mine, and Kanye's been a friend of mine for a long time. And Jim came out of nowhere, and he said, I like what the president's doing. A long time ago, we met, right? And I just appreciate it very much. And you know, if you look at the employment numbers, if you look at the median income, if you look at every single indicator, we're keeping our promise, Jim. Thank you. And I want to thank you. I like North Korea, too. Yeah. Well, he's turned out to be good. Dialogue. We had a little dialogue. And the Secretary of State just came back. Mike, he just came back from North Korea. We had very good meetings, and we'll meet again, but we're doing good. No more nuclear testing, no more missiles going up, no more nothing. And that was headed to war. That was headed to war.
Yeah, I mean, to me it seemed like that close.
Yep, it was so close. I spoke to President Obama. I will tell you that was headed to war. And now it's going to be, I believe it's going to work out very well.
And stop the war.
We really stopped it. We saved millions of lives. You know, Seoul has 30 million people. You don't realize how big. 30 million people right near the border, 30 miles off the border. Millions of people would have been killed. And I will say Chairman Kim has been really good, and we made a lot of progress. That's nice that you say that because that's a big thing. These folks were covering North Korea, not very promisingly. There were a lot of problems. President Obama said that was his biggest problem. And I don't say anything solved.
Anyone solved one of his biggest problems?
Yeah.
We solved one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, it was a big solving, and not solved yet, but I think we're on the way.
We know we did with some.
We're well on our way.
You know what I mean, too.
In a short period of time, Jim. Very short period of time. You know, I left Singapore 3 months ago, and we've made a lot of progress, so it's very good. Hey, look, that's one of many things. But I appreciate everything with you. I tell you what, Kim was in. Mrs. Johnson, we got her out. She was very unfairly treated. And there are many other people like that.
We have Larry Hoover's lawyer with us today, and it's a prisoner that we're focused on. He has 6 life sentences, and they have him next to the Unabomber doing 23 and 1.
What did he do, Larry? What happened? What did he do?
Why is he in?
Yes, tell us the story.
Allegedly, it's for conspiracy from prison, from state prison. It's alleged. But we do believe, even if he did commit those crimes, the sentence was overly broad into
What was the sentence?
6 consecutive life sentences in the most secure prison in the world, also known as a clean version of hell, for basically an economic crime.
What prison is that? Name of the prison?
ADX Supermax in Florence, Colorado. They house the Unabomber, Al-Qaeda operatives, mass killers, Oklahoma City bomber, things of that nature.
How old is he? How old?
68.
He's 68 years old?
Yeah, 68 years old.
And really the reason why they imprisoned him is because he started doing positive for the community. He started showing that he actually had power, that he wasn't just one of a monolithic voice, that he could wrap people around. So there's my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful though, but there's times where, it's something about, I love Hillary, I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son. It was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman, that's my favorite superhero. And you made a Superman cape for me also as a guy that looks up to you, looks up to Rap Lauren, looks up to American industry guys, non-political, no put the beep on it, however you want to do it, 5 seconds delay, and just goes in and gets it done. Right now, you gave me the heart to go to Adidas, because at Adidas, when I went in 2015, we were a $14 billion company, losing $2 billion a year. Now we have a $38 billion market cap. It's called the Yeezy effect. And I went to Casper, we had a meeting in Chicago, and I said, you have to bring manufacturing onshore, not even shore, into the core. It's not about the borders, the core of Adidas. And Chicago is the core of Middle America. We have to make Middle America strong. So I had to, because I had enough put on this hat. I mean, this Adidas thing made me a billionaire. And I could have lost $200 million walking away from that deal. But even with that, I knew it was more important for me to take the chance of walking away from that deal than to have no fathers in Chicago with no homes. And when we do have prison reformation, because it's habilitation, not rehabilitation, because we didn't have the abilities in the first place. We never had anyone that taught us. We didn't teach us. Exactly, we had no one that taught us, right? So it's more important than any specific deal, anything that we bring jobs into America, and that we provide a transition with mental health and the American education curriculum that Jim has worked on. Larry Hoover also has a curriculum that he's worked on. We have Montessori curriculums that we worked on. WeWorks has a beautiful curriculum. The Waldorf establishment has a curriculum. We have meditation. There's a lot of things affecting our mental health that makes us do crazy things, that puts us back into that trap door called the 13th Amendment. I did say abolish with the hat on, because why would you keep something around that's a trap door? If you're building a floor, the Constitution is the base of our industry, right? Of our country, of our company. Would you build a trap door that if you mess up and you accidentally something happens, you fall and you end up next to the Unabomber? You got to remove all that trap door out of the relationship. The 4 gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment, and I think the way the universe works, it's perfect. We don't have 13 floors, do we? So the four gentlemen that wrote the 13th Amendment didn't look like the people they were amending. Also, at that point, it was illegal for blacks to read, or African Americans to read. And so that meant if you actually read the amendment, you get locked up and turned to a slave. Again, so what I think is we don't need sentences, we need pardons. We need to talk to people. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I was connected with a neuropsychologist that works with the athletes in the NBA and the NFL. And he looked at my brain. It's equal on 3 parts. I'm going to go ahead, drop some bombs for you. 98 percentile IQ test. I had a 75 percentile of all human beings, but it was counting 8 numbers backwards off it was repeating. So I'm going to work on that one. The other one's 98% Tesla, Freud. So he said that I actually wasn't bipolar, I had sleep deprivation, which could cause dementia 10 to 20 years from now, where I wouldn't even remember my son's name. So all this power that I got, and I'm taking my son to the Sox game and all that, I wouldn't be able to remember his name from a misdiagnosis. And what we need is, we can empower the pharmaceuticals and make more money. That's one thing. I've never stepped into a situation where I didn't make people more money. So we can empower pharmaceuticals, we can empower our industries, we can empower our factories, we can bring not only Adidas on shore, we can bring Foxconn to set up a factory in, I think, Minnesota, 53,000.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. They have 4,000 jobs, people making $53,000 a year. And one of the things we gotta set is Ford to have the highest design, the dopest cars, the most amazing. I don't really say dope, I don't say negative words and try to flip them. We just say positive, lovely, divine, universal words. So the flyest, freshest, most amazing car. And what we want to start with is, I brought a gift with me right here. This right here is the iPlane 1. It's a hydrogen-powered airplane, and this is what our president should be flying in. Look at this, Jared.
We'll get rid of Air Force One. Can we get rid of Air Force One? No, you don't like that.
Well, we're gonna have Apple, an American company, work on this plane with. But you know what I don't like about? It's not that I don't like. What I need Saturday Night Live to improve on, or what I need the liberals to improve on is, if he don't look good, we don't look good. This is our president. He has to be the freshest, the flyest planes, the best factories, and we have to make our core be empowered. We have to bring jobs into America, because our best export is entertainment and ideas. But when we make everything in China and not in America, then we're cheating on our country. And we're putting people in positions to have to do illegal things to end up in the cheapest factory ever, the prison system.
I'll tell you what, that was pretty impressive, folks. You know, I hate to say this, Jim. Do you want to say something? What do you do after that?
If you don't mind,
You are please, Jim, please.
He doesn't look good, we don't look good.
Right. Great, right? Isn't that a great statement?
Yes, it is.
And it's so true. As a country, it's so true. Very impressed. I've never seen Jim Brown impressed before. He was impressed. That's true. That statement is amazing, huh? I want to tell you, it's great to have you guys with us. And we're going to go in, we're going to have some lunch. That was quite something. That was quite something.
That was from the soul.
Yeah, no. It's really, really very interesting. Yes, yeah, please.
So you had said of President Bush that he doesn't care about black people. And you've heard some people say that about this president. How do you respond to that? What do you think of that?
I think we need to care about all people. And I believe that when I went on to NBC, I was very emotional, and I was programmed to think from a victimized mentality, a welfare mentality. I think that with blacks and African Americans, we really get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry. We say if people don't have land, they settle for brands. We want Polo Sport and Obama again. We want a brand more than we want land, because we haven't known how it feels to actually have our own land and have ownership of our own blocks. So when you don't have ownership, then it's all about how something looks. It's about the patina, it's not about the soil, it's not about the core. So we focus more on, is somebody wearing something? Is someone disrespecting me, so I gotta shoot them? Or the idea of someone being racist. You know, we talk about police murders, which we definitely have to discuss, and we have to bring nobility to the police officers and make them, because police officers are just like us. But this is this whole hate building, right? And that's a major thing about racial tension. And we also, as black people, we have to take a responsibility for what we're doing. We kill each other more than police officers. And that's not saying that the police officer is not an issue, because they are in a position of power. But sometimes they're in placement of law enforcement. They need to be law power. It's force versus power. When you shouldn't have to force people to do that. So a lot of times a police officer is sitting there, they're being forced to do this and forced to do that block, and then they force somebody into something and force something. We have to release the love throughout the entire country and give opportunities. A lot of times it's just the overall lack of reparations that we, at any given point, we say, oh, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist. So we don't have the reparations, but we have the 13th Amendment. We got to open up the whole conversation. So, and that's a move. One of the moves that I love that liberals tried to do, the liberal would try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall.
Mr. West, what would you like?
But you don't think oh, your question. You had one question. We're going to go to another question. Okay. I answered your question. I don't answer questions in simple sound bites. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it. You better play 4D chess with me like it's Minority Report. Because it ain't that simple. It's complex.
Mr. West, what would you like? I'm going to Chicago sometime, so I would like to know what you would like to ask President Trump to do for Chicago. You're here to talk about crime in Chicago.
The thing that the head of the police and Mike Sachs met with me last night at the Soho House about was we feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city. And everyone that knew I was coming here said, ask about stop and frisk. That's the number one thing that we're having this conversation about. Another thing is opening up industries, and we've got to get some tax breaks because we're making we got a speed factory in Atlanta, but the shoes are costing us $300, so it's costing us too much to make things. So we need some prototypes here so we can get people back working. So China can't just beat us and Vietnam can't beat us. You got Levi's, the greatest jeans company in the world, making their jeans in Vietnam. So we're going to need to get a few breaks to be able to have some places in my hometown of Chicago and the 2.7 million to the 9 million surrounding suburbs where we can create some factories. Now, I think it would be cool for them to be Trump factories because he's a master of industry. He's a builder. And I think it would be cool to have Yeezy ideation centers, which would be a mix of education that empowers people and gives them modern information. Like sometimes people say, this kid has ADD, this kid has ADD. He don't have ADD, school is boring. It was boring, it's not as exciting as this. We have to make it more exciting, we have to mix curriculums. You play basketball while you're doing math. You learn about music while you meditate in the morning. We have to instate mental health and art programs back into the city. So those are, and also Larry Hoover is an example of a man that was turning his life around. And as soon as he tried to turn his life around, they hit him with 6 life sentences. So I believe you say don't tear down the statues. Larry Hoover is a living statue. He's a beacon for us that needs to see his family, that needs to go out and represent. When you have a block leader on every single block, they can own the block as their own. That's something I learned from Jim Brown from America Can. We need to put curriculums from people who really came from the streets, not people who are just trying to set us up to go into a work system or prison system that applies to what people are really going through, which Jim Brown has created.
What about gun violence with all the debate about the Second Amendment going on?
The problem is illegal guns. Illegal guns is the problem, not legal guns. We have the right to bear arms.
President Trump has said that he favors stop and frisk. Are you guys going to be discussing that? Do you think you can change his mind?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss. I didn't mean to put you on blast like that, bro. But it's definitely.
I'm open-minded. I'm here. I am open-minded.
To speak at one of your rallies.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie, smart. He gets it. These two guys, Jim Brown, he's been doing this for a long time.
Is this a future presidential candidate?
Could very well be.
Only after.
Could very well be. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We have a good, and the thing is, let's stop worrying about the future. All we really have is today. We just have today, over and over and over again, the eternal return, the hero's journey. And Trump is on his hero's journey right now. And he might not have expected to have a crazy like Kanye West run up and support. But best believe we are going to make America great. Now the thing is, another thing is black people have an issue with the word again, and I believe my feeling from that is because I'm going to go all the way Sigmund with it because time is a myth. All we have is now, all we have is today. So the word again, it doesn't hurt us because of the idea of racism and slavery and different things. It hurts us because we need to focus on who we are now, today, I believe. So I actually brought some hats in that have a bit of a transition. I'm not trying to put you up there a spot a little bit. I made a hat that says Make America Great, just that. But I would love to see, at the Super Bowl, Trump wearing the Make America Great hat, Colin wearing the Make America Great, and showing that we can bend a bit on this side, we can bend a bit on this side, and we can learn how to be malleable in the infinite universe that we are and the loving beings that we are. That we don't have to stick to all traditions, and we aren't a side. We are one unit. We are one country. We are one moment in history and time. We might have been here before, but right now, we're here together, and the greatest value that people have are other people. And we need to stop working on red and blue. It's like a gang again.
Let me ask you this question. You're in the Oval Office.
Okay.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
Isn't it good energy? Yeah.
It's good energy.
It's a great place. Jim, how do you feel?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I truly feel good. I thank you, too.
You're so respected. And what Kanye's doing has been incredible. All over the world, they're talking about this. And I have to tell you, I had important meetings today with senators and with everything. Nobody cared. They wanted this meeting. This is the meeting. Is that right? I can say that to John. No, the others were good, right? But this is what they want.
Maybe only you would be here.
Well, it's my honor, Jim. I want to tell you, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. Long time. Nobody like you. Nobody like you. No athlete like you.
Well, you know why I'm here? I'm here to serve.
Yeah, it's really nice, man.
I'm not here to ask for anything.
Well,
Yeah,
and you know, that's always been the way Jim has been for a long time. And he just wanted to help, and it's something special. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I guess, what do you feel about stop and frisk? Were you gonna?
Well, we're going to look at it. I'm open to everything. Hey, look, I think it's a shame what's happening in Chicago.
What else can be done?
I'm in Chicago a lot, too. I have nice things in Chicago. You know that, right? And I hate to see what's happening. They're having numbers of people being shot and killed, and it's not for this country. So they have to do something, and I am totally open. If we can do it a different way, Kanye, I'm totally open. But they have to do, I mean, we all agree they have to do something, that's for
Mr.
sure.
President, is it a law enforcement issue, a legislation?
Well, maybe it's a
legislative
combination
issue?
of both. Yeah, I guess it is, but I think it's probably a combination of both. And it's also a respect issue. They respect this guy, they respect this guy. That's a big thing. Right now, they're not respecting, let's say your mayor or let's say your leadership in Chicago, but certainly it shouldn't be happening. What's going on there should not be happening. Steve, go ahead.
What do you want this meeting to lead to in terms of prison?
Honestly, from our standpoint, this was just set up to be a lunch of two people that I like, and I guess they like me. And we're going to have lunch, we're going to talk.
You said, I guess you know I love you.
I know.
Did I?
But I don't want to put you in that spot. But
No, I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
That's really,
Yeah.
come here. That's really nice. And that's from the heart. I didn't want to put you in that position, you know, but that's from the heart. Special guy. These two are special people. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, they're special people. And I appreciate it. Jim, Kanye, I appreciate it. So let's go have some lunch.